I'd love to start and devote actually a good portion of time at the beginning of this conversation with the Celonis story. So this event is, as I mentioned a minute ago, very much about data, machine learning, AI, and enterprise software, but it's also very much a startup event where people come to learn and be inspired. So I'd love to start with how this all started for you guys. So maybe if you will rewind to the very beginning, 2011, Munich, Germany.
Yes.
What happened?
Yes. I remember I was just getting undergrad. I was just an undergrad, and I was 21 years old, and we did a university project for a local company here in Munich, with the goal of optimizing their IT service processes. Right, every larger company has an IT help desk to help employees with issues. We have one today, and there were, theirs wasn't working very well. So it took too long to get back to employees when they had issues. Slow process, inefficient process, and they had probably around 100 people working on this process. And this was this kind of project where students get an opportunity to be involved on a real business challenge and learn something about business. We were all technical, probably like many people on this call, like all technical, in technical fields. Like my major was math, and my co-founders were computer scientists. And we go into this, and most people don't really take it seriously. They check the boxes and then move on. And we really sort of fell in love with this company and this project, and we wanted to help them out. So what we did is we did a lot of workshops. This was well pre-COVID, so you could still meet people in person. So we would do a lot of these meetings in conference rooms, and we would basically interview, their employees and what's not working, and how like a consultant. It was really like a consulting, like management consulting project. And at some point, we just noticed like this is so inefficient. Right, we talk to all these people. Everybody tells us something different. You never know what's true. You get like 5 reports out of their reporting system. You don't really get what they mean. They fake the KPI. Like, it's just such an inefficient way to make an assessment of this organization and the problem. And we had learned at university about an emerging technology in data science called process mining, which is takes logs from IT systems and is able to reconstruct how the processes in an organization that uses this IT system actually are performed. So we had this idea to build like an X-ray for a company, right? So we thought, okay, let's build this tool that can X-ray their ticketing system, like a Geo-like system they use, right? And then all the other systems they use, like the telephone system and other systems, to get a visual representation of how this process actually works, and where things fall down, where the bottlenecks are, where all the friction points are. So we wanted to build an X-ray, like a digital X-ray, and we did. We built the first prototype. It was really basic. It was like this thing where basically the UI was like a SQL window to run a SQL code, and then you would get a PNG file of the process. It was very basic, but what it did is it looked like an X-ray system for business. And
it's interesting. So you started, and then we'll talk about this in a minute, because you didn't raise money initially, but when you started, you actually built a product, as opposed to delivering services, or was that a mix of services and
yes? So actually, we didn't raise money for half a decade. We raised 360 million or 67 million since. The first, so the company has been around for 9 years, and the first 5 years we didn't raise a cent. And it was always a product business from the very start. But the initial project, which led to starting the product, was the services kind of thing, but it was more like a university kind of thing, right? It wasn't really.
So how did you do it? Were you able just to, through this university project, find customers early, and your early years were customers?
So here's what happened. The CIO of this company saw the prototype that we built, and he's like, I want to become your customer. And we're like, we are 3 students. we don't even have a company. Like, we just put this prototype and he's like, yeah, I want to be your customer. And then we said, okay, now we've got to start a company. So we started a company. We had no idea how to run a company, how to build a company, like zero, right? We weren't even, like, if you had asked us 2 years before, a year before, 3 months before, would you ever start a company? The answer would have probably been no. It's like, we started a company, and then something incredible happened. Like, they really improved. Like, within 3 months, they got their resolution time for tickets, right? That's a very important metric to measure, down from 5 days to solving over 80% of their tickets in the same day, without firing or hiring a single employee, just through working more efficiently based on this data that we would provide. They got tremendous leaps in productivity and customer satisfaction, etc. And the CIO became our first customer, and then he called up a bunch of CIOs that he was friends with, and we signed up like the first 5 or 6 customers that way, and then we sort of left university and started the Celonis, and the original name of the company was actually Simulytics, which is a terrible name, but then we renamed it Celonis, we got started. And I can talk about how we signed up more customers and things like that, but that was the initial sort of insight, and I think we were very driven by the impact that this idea that we stumbled on, really stumbled, so what extraordinary impact this could have.
The other unusual thing that I noticed as I was going through the history of the company was that you signed an important partnership with SAP a few years, reasonably quickly for a startup. I'm just curious how that came about. The reason why I ask is that it's a question that comes up so many often in startup conversations, like, if only I could sign, Microsoft or Amazon as a partner, I could accelerate. And then there's always like some, debates on the pros and cons. I'm curious how that came about and what.
There's actually a lot of people ask me, like, have you ever worked for SAP or something like that? And before we started Celonis, even when we started Celonis, like at the day we sort of started the company, I didn't know what SAP was. I didn't know the company existed. I didn't know what the system was. I had no idea, right? And but we found out pretty quickly that if you optimize business processes, I don't know, something like 80% of the world's transactions still go through SAP systems. Like, it's just crazy. They have a crazy sort of share of the transactions in businesses. So it was pretty clear that SAP would be a core system of record that we would get our data from and tie into and help optimize the usage of, etc. So that was very clear. And like, we had no idea how to build a partnership with SAP. So, and then I did some research on the company, and I found out that the founder of SAP, the chairman, is a guy called Hasso Plattner, which some of you might have heard about. And then the interesting thing is, I grew up in Berlin. I didn't grow up in Munich. I started the company in Munich, but I grew up in Berlin. And Hasso Plattner lives in Berlin, like in Potsdam, which is like a city very close to Berlin. Probably 10 minutes, and he started his institute, which is probably 10 minutes drive from where I grew up. And I saw that he would give a speech, around his institute. So I called up my mother and said, hey, I'm coming home, on a visit. She was like, oh, great, you haven't been here for a while. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to stay long, but I got to talk to Hasso Plattner. And I went to the speech, with no intention to listen to the speech. I mean, it was interesting, but that wasn't my goal. But my goal was to talk to him. And I had like a few slides printed out on Celonis. We had signed up the first customers and showing the product, what we could do with SAP data. And he literally gave a speech and then left to go to a VIP area that was sort of guarded by security. So I couldn't speak to him. So I waited for probably around 3 hours in front of the VIP area until he literally had a stone in his shoe and had to leave the area to go outside to sort of, And I said, hey, Asa, you really got to see this. And he listened. He gave me like 5 minutes of his time, and I showed him, and he just instantly got it, because of course, I mean, if you've sort of built the main transactional engine for business processes, you understand what Celonis is pretty quickly. And then he said, look, I really like it. We just came out with our first, first in-memory database, HANA, which could be a really great platform for you guys to test out. And I said, we already did. It's really exciting. And we had a conversation. And then he introduced me to the then CTO. And then, we didn't actually get to speak to the CTO. The CTO introduced another person, but it was like the introduction came from Hasso, which means a lot, And then we forged the partnership with SAP, and I think, we are today it's a great partnership still. We are the biggest product on there that they sell outside of their own portfolio. This is the biggest third-party product in the cloud. It's, I think, been one of the fastest growing ISV partnerships for in the whole sort of growth company and startup domain. It's been really exciting, and it took us almost 3 years from this point to actually start the reseller partnership. We went through various other levels of partnership before that. It takes, one advice I would give entrepreneurs is like a partnership. Some entrepreneurs look at this at a big tech partnership as this silver bullet that's going to solve their go-to-market problem. That's not going to happen, right? It's going to be a very long journey and going to take a long time, require a lot of, align incentives. It's not that straightforward, but it worked well for us in SAP.
And maybe just one last sort of topic in this sort of like entrepreneurial journey. Maybe talk a little bit about the international expansion. So how do you go from a Munich-based company to a global company? And I think you now, although you're in Germany today, I think you live in New York, if I understood correctly. And what did that take? And some lessons learned along the way.
Yeah, happy to talk about it. I mean, once we had sort of built, I think the first thing in every company that you need to do, and then you need to be like super serious about in the early stages, is building really strong product market fit, right? And I think people sometimes underestimate it. They say like, if I talk to a VC, I always say I have product market fit. Of course, you guys will hear it all the time, and that's fine. You need to raise money, but as an entrepreneur, you want to make sure that you start really scaling once you've actually real product market fit, right? Meaning you know what to sell, who to sell it to, they're willing to pay for it, they're willing to use it, they're willing to renew, and you really figure that out. And once we figured that out, we said, okay, now it took us a few years to do that. Now we really want to make this, a much bigger company. And it was clear and I think the first thing we noticed is that, we have this principle at Celonis we call FISA, focus, invent, simplify, act. And it's really about sort of focusing and simplifying things. So first thing we learned about international expansion is you got to be extremely focused on how many markets you go into, how quickly, right? So it's better to most of these markets, especially when it has to do with data, are relatively large. So it's better to reach penetration in some core markets than to try to spread yourself too thin all across the world. It's not going to matter. So for us, it was very clear that the big sort of bet in terms of international expansion would be the US. It's by far the largest enterprise software market in the world. I think that, companies that are started in the US have the luxury to wait a little bit until they think about international expansion. Companies that start in Europe often have to do it earlier to become relevant, because you really can't be relevant without being very strong in the US. So we said, okay, the US is going to be the market that we're going to tackle, and that was in 2016. That's also what we raised our first venture capital around, because we were completely bootstrapped, but we just didn't know how much investment would take, also network and expertise to get into the US. And then, I decided to take it on because it was such an incredible experience again. It was almost like starting the company again, with more experience, with more, obviously more product behind it, more customer validation, etc. But I think what we learned is especially when you move into the US, but I think it's probably similar for American companies when they move to Europe, is that's a very serious move, meaning you need to really, do it very well. You need to adjust your messaging to fit the culture. One of the things I learned, like we were super successful, like the US took off like this, like it just tripled again last year. And it's growing extremely fast. It's is also our biggest market now. So it's been an incredible journey. But what we notice is you really need to make sure you take it very seriously. You are very focused, and then we started in the US again. I always said we came on the Mayflower, with two guys, me and another guy. We went over to the US to start the business there, and you do all the things that you do when you start the company originally, except for building a product. You hire a team, get the first customers, you market, you build the company. And I think the probably second key lesson I had learned when sort of starting the company for the first time in 2011 is you just have to assemble an extraordinary team. I think that's another one of our core values and beliefs is the best team wins. And that's just so true. And every time I've compromised on that, I've regretted it. Every time I've stayed true to that value, I've just, it's just extraordinary. So that's probably, one advice I would give people. The other advice is, like, as you go global, you got to make sure that you create a glue between the culture and you really create one culture. So you also, really have to think about how do people work in the individual, countries, what is their cultural backgrounds, etc. Like Americans are different from Germans, etc. So you got to really make that dynamic work. The biggest thing is to hire really good people. Yeah.
Fascinating. All right, so switching gears to the product itself. So at a pretty granular level, so how does that work? So you basically have a platform that has little tentacles in every repository and tracks the data, or how do you get the data into the system so you can mine the process as you defined earlier?
Yes, perfect. Great question. So we basically, there's different types of data sources, right? So one, there's the transactional systems, SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, etc. And you typically connect to either to the database or through an API, right? So if we connect to SAP or if we connect to Oracle, we pull thousands of tables from these systems. Yeah? So we have over 100 pre-built connectors to transaction systems. We've really built standards around this, so it's easier for customers to get started. Then there is task data, which happens on a user's desktop and is not actually recorded in any transactional system. That would be opening an email or looking at an Excel sheet. And we can also track that data through basically little tentacles that we have into the desktops, anonymize the data, get rid of all the private data automatically, and then pull it into our system to complement this transactional data with task data. And then there's some external data that we might pull from a Nielsen or like an external data source. You can pull that in typically through APIs as well. So I would say, benchmarking data between our customers, so that's easy because the data is already in our cloud. It's a fully cloud-based platform. But I would say the data extraction process depends on the source of the data. There's multiple sources of data, and then we've built a lot of standards around that.
Mm-hmm. Because presumably that's pretty noisy data. That's very different formats, different sources, and so you have to clean everything up and to ingest.
Yes, but that's the interesting thing about Celonis is that's what the process mining algorithms do. So we don't do any manual data cleaning. We actually want to see all the noise because we want to find out where the noise is in the process. Right. And the system is good at sort of finding what's just an automated process and where is the human actually wasting time, and you can do that automatically, but we don't have like a big data harmonization cleaning or so effort. I give you an example. Like we have a customer, Siemens, one of our biggest deployments. It's just a huge company. They started early. They pull in 16 billion data records a day. So there's a lot of data that goes through.
And so once you've gathered the data, then what is the next step? And maybe as I think through this, so you define process mining earlier, but just so that it's super clear to everyone, maybe give an example of a process that you would mine and improve, and then we'll go back into how that actually works.
Imagine you shopping online. Okay, so you buy something on Amazon. There's different steps to that process. You start somewhere on the website. You go buy something, you pay, then it goes into the warehouse, it gets shipped, then you get a bill, it gets billed. So that would be a process. That would something we define as a process. It has multiple data sources, right? There could be data in a web server, there could be data in the transactional system, the various transactional systems Amazon uses, and there could be data on desktops of Amazon employees. If there's an issue with your order, they obviously, this is a process with a high degree of automation, but also a high number of transactions. Or imagine you're applying for a credit card. That would be another process that could run through multiple systems. So what the system would do automatically is find out how does this process work? Meaning what is the sequence of flow, what is the duration of flow, what is the variation of flow in the most frequent pathway this process takes. So if everything goes well, we call this the happy path. And then what are all the deviations? What are root causes for these deviations? Every time you order something from Tampa, there's a delay, or every time you order this product group, there's a delay, or there's a huge correlation between product group and delay. And then, or for example, there's a huge correlation between individual products from a product group and the amount of returns you have, so that you can say, okay, maybe the product description isn't accurate because people send it back all the time. So essentially, you have a process. It could be any everyday process, and it goes through various data sources. We are very good at collecting this data, and then are very noisy and high volumes of data to get an X-ray that is very easy to read and finds friction points automatically to detect where the inefficiencies are. And then we actually go a step further and trigger automated improvements and actions from that.
Yeah, so how does that part work?
So essentially, if we notice patterns and we have we add some sort of domain knowledge around certain scenarios like e-commerce, like accounting, etc., we can right away automate an action, and our users can also define that based on what we see in the data. So the data is synced in real time, and then we trigger actions automatically based on what happens. So for example, if you see that they very frequently for some product, there are so many returns, and it didn't seem to be the product itself, but more the description of the product, you could automatically trigger the process for the product description to get updated, as an example, right? And you wouldn't.
Now, how does that manifest? Like the whoever in the enterprise is in charge of like writing the product description would get notification.
Would get an alert with an action recommendation, say, hey, you take care of this. There's some things that you can fully automate. So I give you an example, like with COVID, every company was looking to preserve cash. Every big company was like, okay, suddenly we have dips in revenue, we have uncertainty, like we need to keep cash as tight as possible. So we have an app that looks through all of your invoices and figures out which invoices you can pay later than you pay them today, right? Because you don't use the full term of the contract, etc. And when we see that an invoice is about to get paid early in the system, we just block it and delay it. Mm-hmm. And that's something like we have a customer that based on this payment timing, like Telecom is a big telco, they have $40 million just using that app. There's a huge value around this, and we add domain specificity, and we have a partner network creating these apps on top of our platform that address specific use cases.
Mm-hmm. So ultimately, you really disrupt consulting, right? As an industry, like instead of sending a bunch of people to look at processes and do PowerPoints to suggest how one should improve a process, you automate part of this. Is that fair or no?
Yes, I think that's fair. We don't replace consulting. I think we disrupt it for sure. but we have thousands of certified consultants from KPMG, from McKinsey, et cetera, that use our platform extremely heavily. So a consultant can actually help a customer, get these insights. A consultant can productize their intellectual property in these apps that we have. So consultants can actually be great partners for us, or are great partners for us. But their value proposition shifts, right? From creating a lot of value by generating insight and doing assessments to generating, having that fully automated, and even having some of the actions automated, to really, implementing this product, providing guidance to the customer on which areas to look at first, providing industry specificity to the use cases, things like that.
Mm-hmm. So we should probably open up to questions soon, but and I have a lot of other questions because this is fascinating. But maybe just one topic, given the nature of the event, the machine learning part. Where does it come in here? Is that for the recommendations that you make? Okay. So how does that?
And I mean, the machine learning, we use it in various areas for clustering, abstraction, but recommendations, predictions is a big thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I look at as machine learning as if you have a ton of data, you can just train you can have much better predictions, much better clustering, much better models, like things that you could accomplish just setting a model with machine learning, you can do better. So we use it in tons of different areas. Yeah.
And how do you think about the interplay between sort of business roles and machine learning? I mean, presumably there's certain areas where, you want to predict that, okay, maybe that's a description that didn't work, but sometimes you're no, send that invoice faster. This is 100% certainty.
Yes, and there's use case for both.
Yeah.
I don't, some people talk about the self-driving enterprise, right? I mean, that's just, we can't even get cars to, maybe we can, but it's it takes us years to get cars to drive on their own, right? Right. How long did it take you to get a driver's license? It just took you a couple of weeks, right? How long would it take you to run Procter & Gamble? We're not going to have a self-driving enterprise. You need employees and human input, but you can automate, some things and also augment many things. Mm-hmm. I think it's not a question of either or, it's really an end.
Right. Great. All right, Jack, should we open up for some questions from the group?
That's great. You guys can hear me all right? Hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So we've got a bunch of great questions from the chat. I'm going to start with a three-prong question around data security from Hira. So how do you address or handle data security? Does your solution touch customer data or sensitive PII? And if you do, how do you comply as a global company with data security privacy regulations?
I mean, we started selling to public organizations in Germany. This was we probably have the biggest data protection standards in the industry. And obviously we have a strong European business that so obviously the GDPR is a huge topic for us. So there's many things I could explain you the program in half an hour, but we never take any risk on that, right? So there's many things we anonymize. The customer is fully transparent to the customer. There's solutions where you can keep the data on premise if you don't want to put it into a cloud system. We have Gov Cloud solution for the American government. There's tons of ways we address it, but the important principle is that it's a super big priority and it always comes first.
That's great. Another question from Irene, more on the team building side. So how do you define extraordinary? And maybe, ask differently, is there an example of a time where you compromised on team and regretted it?
Yeah, so if everybody here who manages a team or wants to build a company, I can just recommend this. I really make sure that you get the right players on the field, and then you got to make them work together as a team, which is also a big part of leadership. But it all starts with getting the right players on the field. And I think that I always look for three things. They call them the 3 C's. It's character, commitment, and capability. And then if you check all the 3 C's, you've got the 4th C, which is Celonis. And And the character, and they are not in random order, they are in purposeful order. Character is the most important thing. Like if you're not humble, if you don't have the right spirit, if you don't have a ownership spirit, if you don't have a collaborative spirit, if you're more about your own success than the team's success, you can be the smartest person and the most committed person in the world. This team is not going to succeed. And I've learned this with my co-founders to start, and then with the whole team that we've built. It's like character is just such an important element. And especially when you're on an entrepreneurial journey and you want to build something where you really don't have time for any politics, where you don't have time for any ego and any of those things, right? So character is the main one. Second is commitment. Like, can't really teach commitment. There's people that are ambitious, there's people that are not, and you want people that are committed. And then third is capability. And that's actually the one that you can make. I mean, obviously you need capable people, but you can sometimes compromise in capability because that's something people can learn. Whereas, it's very hard to learn to teach character or commitment.
That's great.
I mean, I think it's super important, super important. And we've really learned this as one of our key priorities. And I think that you can never predict the market challenges, as we saw with COVID, right? The company trajectory, whatever is going to happen, competition, but you own the team that you build to tackle all these challenges.
Absolutely. Quick question from Robert. So how did your commercial model and pricing begin and evolve based on, like, as you scaled?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think that, again, it's a slightly long conversation, but what's important is that we always try to tightly price based on the value the customer receives. And we always sort of price the individual components of a product, so there's much more value than what it costs, but also there's a clear relationship between price and value. And we initially priced the platform based on a process-based model, and then went to a user and capacity-based model because it's much easier. And I think that we always wanted to create a company with good fundamentals, because that way we can take care of our customers better. And I think pricing is a huge element of creating good fundamentals. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, if they sell to the enterprise, they underestimate the effort of selling to the enterprise and end up selling their products so cheap, so that the sales process is so cumbersome that you can't really invest into it. So I would always recommend on thinking about what's our sales model, and really thinking to align the pricing both with the value of the product, but also the unit economics of your sales model.
That's great. And Matt, I'll just ask if there are any other questions right now that you wanted to. There are a few more in the chat, but
go ahead. I'm actually since one of the questions I had is actually Alex provided the perfect segue into it. What is the sales model at Celonis? I mean, is it all like AE driven with some SDRs and BDRs, like a full-on enterprise sales force type model?
Yes, it's a full-on enterprise sales force. We have introduced digital channels, where, for example, you can go on our website, and by the way, everybody should do that. Sign up for Celonis Snap for free and just use the product, right? And then you can go into paid tiers and things like that. But if you are from a big company, there's a chance that somebody might give you a call. But you can test our product. It's very easy to sort of onboard. And even for COVID, we launched some rapid response apps to help customers out that are free on our Snap platform. So there's a digital nature to that. But it's an enterprise. I mean, we sell to the enterprise, and it's an enterprise model. Yeah.
Great. There's maybe two more, Matt, from the chat.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So the first one is, how do you think about headquarters in Germany versus headquarters in the US, and what were the considerations that went into that decision?
Yeah, we actually dual headquarter in Germany and the US. And I think you can make different decisions, different things make sense for different companies. The one thing is to be very clear about it. I think that's sort of a big element. I think especially I think that we will think about this question completely differently in 6 months than we did a year ago and then we do today, right? So, I think that previously you needed to have an extremely clear location strategy. I think now you have to have a strategy for how to deal with locations in general and deal with the new reality.
Right.
We started in Germany, we're a German company, but we the US is a huge market for us and a huge space for us. So we just decided we want to be a global company and have two strong hubs, one in the US, one in Munich. And we are very clear about what's done where and who's where, etc. Ask me again in 6 months, nobody, certainly the last month have been a bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And I'll end on this one. What's next in the product evolution? What are you most excited about? What's coming down the pipe for Celonis?
Yeah, so we're adding a lot of intelligence. I would love to share everything with you. I can't, but there's a lot coming, and it's all about accelerating the time to value for our customers. I think that's honestly, that sounds very basic, but for every entrepreneur out there, for everyone building a product, that's really what you need to think about. Like, there's so many people that add things to their product roadmap in order to add cool, fancy features to their product. I think the only thing you should think about, and you should be extremely FISA about prioritizing your product roadmap, should be what accelerates time to value, meaning either gets more value in the same time or gets the same value quicker, or both, to your customers.
That's great. Thank you.
Since we have like a couple minutes left, another question on go-to-market. How do you think about the interplay between horizontal and vertical? Like, I would assume that if you serve finance customers or healthcare customers or industrial customers, there's some specificity to the processes, or so is a product. Is there a part of the product that's industry specific, one, and I guess two, is there a vertical specific aspect to the go to market?
Yeah, it's an extremely smart question, and appreciate that. I mean, I think the key thing there is, I think many companies have the opportunity to verticalize their product, and we do, but now we are much larger. It's just also, again, a question of FISA, right? If it's harder to sell a platform than a solution. You typically have to have a solution for a problem. And if you can start by solving a horizontal problem that has a big market and penetrate that, do that. And then you verticalize, you get more verticalized, you get bigger, but it doesn't make sense if you have 20 salespeople to have 20 verticals, right? That's how we essentially did it. We started very horizontal, and then we, as we grew, it became more vertical. And of course, we asked me in 3 to 4 years, it will be very different, right? Because we evolved. It's just, to all the sort of earlier stage entrepreneurs out there, I would just be very FISA about that question. But I think most platforms have the opportunity to do both, right? Have some horizontal solutions and then grow into more vertical specific ones. And we certainly do at Celonis.
Great. All right. Look, I mean, I've got another 100 questions, literally. And this is fascinating.
I'll be back, guys.
Such a story. Love the hustle story at the beginning is amazing. And, what you guys have built, like, it feels so meaty and important, and it will indeed unlock millions of dollars of savings. So it's very, very impressive, and really appreciate your coming, joining the group today and telling us about this story. Is fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.